Everybody, good afternoon. I am here with Ray Lane. Ray Lane's uh, not only has he been involved in online marketing, but he's also a consultant. And I think what he has done over the years that I've noticed him for is that he has specialized in showing people how to be effective with video. And Ray does a lot of live streaming. I think he does a video podcast. He does a lot of reviews using live streaming. And so I really wanted to talk to him about lighting. One of the things that I see that I think people struggle with when they first get started is lighting. And I wanted Ray to kind of talk from a practical perspective about lighting and then anything else that he thinks that we can learn from in terms of live streaming. Ray, so welcome to us.
Well, thanks for having me on. I'm really excited, and this is one of the subjects that I like to talk about a lot because it's something that a lot of people don't understand very well. It's kind of like there's really three parts to creating a video, at least when you're shooting, and that's what you're seeing on the screen, that's what you're hearing through a microphone, and how you're lighting the subject to make it look better. And those are the three things that have to come together. You've got to set your camera up right, you got to set your lighting up right, and you got to use the right microphones. And while setting up the camera is usually pretty obvious because you can look through it and kind of see what you're doing, and sound, well, that's another issue for another day. But
right.
Lighting is also that third tier that people often forget about and don't really understand how to do it properly. And right now, technically what we're doing now is very similar to a live stream. When I go live, I'm usually sitting right here at my desk. And at my desk, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 lights that we use just for me sitting at my desk. And I'm going to kind of explain not only where they are and what they do and how we use them. And by the way, some of them aren't even turned on yet. So if you're sitting there going, wait, he's talking about lighting and he's in the dark, well, there's a reason for that, and we'll talk about that in a second. So
wait, so hold on. So you said
sure.
7. You have 7.
Correct.
Okay, please. Yeah.
Now, we're not talking about gigantic studio lights here. We're talking about something a little simpler. But yeah, there are 7 lights here. Right now, the main one is in front of me here is actually one of those big ring lights. And I'm sure you guys have seen those before. They're a big donut-shaped lighting grid. And that one I actually use pointing straight at me here because it covers light on all sides and kind of makes it a little softer. Mm-hmm. And, so that's the main light there. But what I also have is over here, I've got this little guy here, which is just a little LED light. It's actually very, very bright, even though physically it's, size of my hand. It's a very bright light, and I put that over here, and right now it's turned off, but you'll see when we turn it on here, the difference that will make instantly there. And then on the other side, I've actually got another one. This is actually a slightly different light made by the same people. And this one is another, it's magnetized on the bottom, so it's sticking to my microphone. It's another LED light. It's a little bit smaller. This one actually plugs directly in using USB, so you can power it up. It is battery powered, but you can leave it plugged in all the time as well. And this one actually has multiple settings that we can use for different color lights as well as different brightnesses. And, it's just got a little thing on the side here. So I typically turn that one on as well. And we put that one on this side. And now, of course, I've moved it around. So we'll see if we set that up. So something like this. And that just fills in both sides. So what we're getting is we're getting light from the front and we're getting lights from the side to fill in some of the shadowing a little bit. Now, the other 4 lights, that's a little bit of a cheat because they're not actually on me. Those are the lights that are pointing at the background. And actually, I lied. There's actually an 8th one, which is a light strip above my head on the top here. And so what we have here, and this is something that I came up with just for fun when I was putting this together. I thought, all these new setups, we've got these LED lights, and we've got these lights that are controllable by phones. And I thought, what would be kind of fun is to build a background like we've done here and then have background lights that we can control with our phone and change the colors on. And so I've got my phone here. And one of the things that I do for my live streams with this is I use these are Philips Hue lights, by the way. Most people are familiar with them. And what's good about these is they're all controllable through a hub. So I can come in here and I can open up this app. And right now you can see that each of the lights that we have, which there are actually 5. There's one over here, one down here, one up here, one down there, and then the strip going along the back here, they're all currently set to blue. And the reason they're set to blue is I was doing a webinar on Photoshop, and of course the logo color for Photoshop is blue, so I decided to make the studio blue. But we can come in here and we can adjust the colors just by pressing these and have some real cool things. So you can see I can change my colors in the background here.
And what is that app, Ray, that you're using to control?
This is actually the official Philips Hue app, but I actually have a couple of apps on here that will connect with the Philips Hue, and one of them, which actually is really cool, will actually change the lights, like in other words, constantly changing them, so they'll change from red to green to blue, you know, and the background will keep changing colors. The basic Philips Hue one does not do that, but this other one does. So what I can come in here is I can come in and I can change these colors. So if I was doing something, I don't know, what's red and yellow? I'm doing something on some sort of program that's red and yellow. Well, we can be red and yellow instead.
Yeah, okay.
And of course, we got the light at the top here, which right above my head is a strip light, and we can change that one too. So you can kind of see that changing in the background there. And so we can have some fun and really get some nice looks without having to use a green screen, which I know many people like a green screen.
Right.
And we'll talk about lighting for green screens in a bit too. But for live video, green screens can be a bit of a pain in the neck because, you know, everything kind of has to be really perfect when you're not using the green screen. It doesn't have to be as perfect. And speaking of perfect, that light is real bright now, isn't it? There we go. Let's adjust that a little bit. And so that just allows us to have a background where we don't have to worry about green screening. We don't have to worry about the processing power that it takes to do live green screening.
Right.
We don't have to worry about, you know, is the light so perfect that we're getting a really good green screen, which can be difficult. And so that's why I decided to build a background and use these lights. The other thing that speaking of lighting, the other thing that I'm thinking of picking up is there's a company that makes these really nice what are called gobo lights, G-O-B-O. And what those are those are the things that you'll see a lot of times on stage where, you know, think of the bat signal. The bat signal is a gigantic gobo. So you can buy this little light. It's a little Canon light, Canon as in Canon shaped, not Canon the company. And you can put things in them that will put a symbol on your backdrop. And so if I wanted to have one that had my logo, then I could shoot my logo onto the backdrop in lighted color. And so I'm thinking about picking one of those up. They're kind of cool. You do have to pay a little bit of money to create the actual gobos that go into the light. But, you know, it can be a kind of an interesting way to use light for some other purposes than just lighting up the subject. So, again, in this setting here, we've got what's called kind of a three-point lighting system. We got a front light, we got two side lights, and then we've got background lights, which are the 5 behind me. I said 4 before, but 5 with the strip.
So Ray, in order of importance, okay, so to start, we would start with the ring light.
Yep.
Okay, the ring light, and then the side lights, or is that and then so if we had to do it in stages, we get the ring light first, definitely.
Yep.
We then get the side lighting, and then we do the Philips Hue setup or something like that.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be the Philips Hues because there's some upsides and downsides to them. They're really cool. The fact that you can change the colors is really cool. The fact that you can animate the colors is really cool. The bad side of them is they're not super bright. I've got 4 here, and I'm thinking about picking up more just because they're not that bright, especially if you use colors like green or blue. It tends to, you notice when I'm using yellows and oranges how bright that is back there now versus when we started, it was very dark and gloomy because blue light is it's just not as strong. It doesn't light things up nearly as much. So really, I probably will get 2 more and put them in the centers and have 2 strips of 3 lights on there just to fix that up. And I may also be trying another thing with my strip light. It's kind of against the wall there. So it's kind of, you know, the strip light is shooting out. And I'm thinking of adding a piece of wood that's triangular in shape. And that way we can put the strip light on it, and the strip light will kind of shoot down more instead of shooting out. And then that way it'll fall down onto the backdrop a little better. So that's another thing that we're, you know, probably going to mess with at some point in time. But it's it's a fairly complex setup as it is. So doing all of that can be a bit of a pain in the neck. But it's not, nothing here is overly expensive. I think the ring light is probably individually the most expensive light. And I got that for, I think it was on sale for like $80. And not only is it big, I mean, this is a big ring light. It's not a small one. It's very large. It came with its own stand. You can adjust the color temperature, so you can make it more yellow or more blue, depending upon, whether you want indoor or outdoor lighting. You can adjust the brightness, and it has an LED readout. So for the $80 that I spent, it's ridiculous what came with that thing. I was blown away. It came with a case and everything. So yeah, that to me is the most important light. You can shoot most things with just a ring light. Okay. And that would do you well there. This light here, the one on the side, this LED light, I think that one is actually more expensive than the giant ring light. I think that was $150. And this little guy over here actually came in a video pack that I got, which came with a stand to hold your phone, so you can use your phone as a camera, and it came with a little microphone and everything, so that was part of the pack. But I use that one mostly for here at the desk because it's small and it's very bright, and so I kind of like that. And so that's the basic setup here. Now, the reason that I kind of bring this up here is, one, we can visually see what we're doing here, but this actually works on the basic principles of video lighting, or at least close to it. It's a slight bit different, but traditionally when you're doing video and you're going to do lighting, we do what's called a three-point lighting. And I'm going to see if I can share my screen here for 1 second.
All right.
And we'll make sure that it works here, hopefully. And this will give you a little diagram here of what I mean. So let me know if you can see that.
Yep, we can see it. Excellent.
Okay. So this is the traditional three-point lighting setup here. And again, mine is kind of built off of this, except in a three-point lighting system, that is 3 points for the subject of the video, so the person that's being shot. Background lights do not count as part of the three-point lighting system because you may be doing all sorts of things in the background. You might be outside, somewhere. You might be, you might have a big, deep background where you don't need lights, or you might be doing green screening. So it can all be different. When you're talking about a subject, you have these three lights here that are built for this. Now, there are some variations on this, but basically you've got your key light. Now, your key light that's your main light. That's the one that's going to really get that light on the subject, okay? And you'll notice here in this one, it's at about a 45-degree angle away from the camera. So if we got the camera in the center there shooting at our subject, that key light is off to the left there, about 45 degrees. And that's going to be a smaller, more focused light. It's going to be brighter. And so it's really going to hit you and really highlight part of your face. Now, because it's on the side at 45 degrees, it's going to light up one side of your face very bright.
Right.
And the other side will be a little darker. And that's why we add what's called the fill light. Now, the fill light, typically that is one of those lights, and we've got a couple of them over here, that are the bigger lights with the soft filter on top of it, the big box around it. And the reason for that is what you're doing is you're sending out slightly less bright light, but you're covering a bigger area. So it's not a spotlight, it is covering everything. It's a much more broad light, and it's going to fill in that other side. So where the key light comes in and really hits you hard, this one's going to come in and fill that in so it doesn't look all shadowed, but there's still going to be a slightly brighter side. And the reason for that is it helps to create 3 dimensions. So it really makes it seem more three-dimensional while still having lighting all over the face. So one side will be a little bit brighter, and it'll be brighter on your nose and on your lips and, in the middle of your head, and kind of just bring out the 3D aspect of that.
Right.
Now you'll notice there's another light in here, and that's the backlight. Okay. And some people call this the shoulder light. And what this does is this actually comes from behind you and comes in to hit the top of your head, the top of your shoulder, and down your arm, and come down a little bit here and maybe even touch your face a little bit. But the idea is that separates you from the background. So if you've got just the 2 lights, the fill and the key light, and then you've got kind of a dark background, there wouldn't be much of a separation. You'd kind of wash yourself into that background.
Blend into it. Yeah.
Exactly. And so by putting that backlight and hitting that, it separates you from the background and again, gives more of that three-dimensional look. And it sounds complicated, but it's really not very complicated at all. These types of lights, typically, if you've got, now we're in here, I've got a studio in here. This room here is probably, maybe this office is 200 square feet. So it's not a huge office. And so what I have is over on this side here, I've got the whole wall painted with green screen. And I've got the backlight, I've got the fill light, I've got the key light, and then I've got two giant background lights that just shoot the green screen. And so we got our 3-point lighting, and then we've got our two big background lights. And again, to be 100% honest, I probably should have 4 background lights because I should have one up high, one down low, one up high, and one down low to really fill that in. But the 2 lights that I have there, they are the soft filter lights. So they're very big, and they've got the big soft filter on it, so it spreads evenly across the background. But really, we probably could use with either 4 of them or maybe a third big one that's actually in the ceiling and shooting down towards the middle. And that would really kind of fill that out even better on the green screen or on a background. It doesn't have to be for the green screen. In this case, it is, but it would be for the background. But it's the same exact principle. We've got the 3 lights, and then we've got the background lights. And in
I have
this
a
case
question.
Sure.
I have a question, Ray. Okay, so I've always understood that when you didn't have one or maybe even 2 of these, that depending on whether you're using a mobile device or whether you're using a webcam, that even though it did it imperfectly, that the webcam is supposed to try to compensate. Or am I right about that?
Yeah, it definitely will, but lighting is always going to be your friend. If you, for instance, if you were in a dark room, yes, that camera's going to try and compensate to give you the best, picture possible with lighting. But what you're going to sacrifice with that is you're going to sacrifice detail, and it's going to start to get grainy. You're going to start to see kind of that dancing grain on the screen. And so you can do that, and it will definitely help. But anytime you can add light, it's always going to improve what you've got there. In fact, for many people, if you're in an office building and you've got fluorescent lights, they can be your friend too, because they put out a very even light. So it's not like a lamp where it's going to spotlight really hard on you in some way. It's going to spread around the room a little more. There are some downsides to this, and what that would be is if you ever get a chance, if you're ever in a room that has fluorescent lights in the ceiling, turn it on and just turn on your video camera and film something. Film a wall. And then go and bring that into your video editing system and go frame by frame. And what you're going to notice is every frame is going to be a slightly different color. Because even though when you look at this fluorescent light, you see, okay, it's a white fluorescent light bulb, it's really not. What it is it's cycling through a bunch of different colors. And so if you go frame by frame, you're going to see that the wall kind of turns a light green, then it turns a slightly yellow color, then it turns a blue color. And it's not harsh, but you can actually see that when you play back a video later. You can kind of see some of that change if you're looking for it, and it can be a problem. But if it's fluorescent lights versus not having good lights, the fluorescent lights are going to do a good job for you.
Yep.
And the other thing too is nowadays it's not that difficult to get what they call balanced fluorescent light bulbs. So if you don't have key lights and fill lights and all that stuff, you can get fluorescent tubes for your office that are daylight balanced and that are they're more stable. They're not going to change color on you. And some are even specifically built for photography. They're a lot more expensive, but they're going to give you a perfectly stable light, and they're not going to have that flicker, and they're not going to have that color change on you. So there are opportunities to do that as well. In fact, before I moved here, I lived in California, and I had an office in my home, and I didn't have all the lights that I have here. So, well, I did, but there wasn't as much room in the home office either. I had some of the lights, but you just couldn't fit them all in there without it looking like a jungle of some kind when you tried to walk in. But one of the things that it did have is it had recessed lighting. And so what I did was I replaced all of the light bulbs that were in the recessed lighting with those curlicue fluorescent bulbs.
Yeah.
But I went on to Amazon, and I specifically got daylight balanced photography lights. And that way the room when I put these lights into the sockets in the room, it would be daylight balanced, so it'd have a daylight color to it. It wouldn't. Yeah. And by the way, when we talk about that, even though the human eye isn't going to necessarily notice the difference most of the time, when you're outside in the sun, that light is actually very, very blue. Even though, you see the sun is yellow, the light that you get from the sun is very blue when it comes to, if you were to be able to measure it. It's what's called 5,600 Kelvin. And that's a bluish color. Even though it doesn't look like it's blue when it's out there, it actually is. And your eyes adjust. So you go outside and your eyes adjust, and so white doesn't look blue because the sun's hitting it. You still see white. But if you were to monitor this inside and outside, you would see that the outside whites would look very blue and the inside whites would look very orange. And you've probably seen that if you've ever watched, like a perfect example would be a wedding video.
Right. Yeah. Right.
And you see the bride indoors dancing, and she looks like she's wearing orange.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And so that's basically what you have there. So if you buy daylight balanced lights, there's two things that happen. One, you can shoot and using the daylight filters and whatnot, and I find that to look a little bit better. But the other thing is, during the day, if you've got windows, well, now you can mix light coming in from the windows with your light bulbs and your lights that are daylight balanced, and you won't have the outside light battling with your inside lights. They'll actually both be the same.
Now, I'm probably going back a ways. In order to start piecing this together, would you do this through Amazon? I know that, you know, in my brain, I'm still thinking digital juice and stuff like that, but you'd still do all this at Amazon, I'm guessing.
Most of the time. I mean, we get some of our stuff from B&H. We get some of our stuff from Adorama, which are both big film and video places. Right. And I also get like a lot of the smaller ones, like this guy here and the one over here. I get those from a company called Movo, M-O-V-O, and they make lights and all sorts of stuff for a lot of the stuff they have is for the smaller screen. So I'm talking like stuff to use your phone as your camera. So they make stands for your phone. They make lights that are smaller so that you can do home studios and things like that. And then I get stuff at Amazon as well. So my big lights here, most of those came from Amazon. Ironically, my fill light here and my backlight back there on the other side of this room, I've had for probably 20 years.
Interesting.
And the only thing that's changed is what I put in them as far as light bulbs. When I first got them, they used just big incandescent bulbs. But now I use, in fact, let me do a visual aid. I'm going to be right back. So keep everybody entertained for 10 seconds.
Right. Everybody, as you have questions, feel free to type them into the chat area, and then I will put them to Ray. So wherever you have questions, just write them in. I'll put the questions to Ray, and then we'll go forward.
All right. So one of the things that I've done with those old lights and the lights that I have, they're just photography lights. So they're a big metal can is what they're called. It's, the little shield, and then the light bulb goes inside and it spreads the light out. Well, when they came, they used to come with the regular old light bulbs, the incandescent bulbs, but they were large. Well, nowadays what I use is this. And this is just a gargantuan version of the curly Q bulbs that you put in your lamps at home.
Okay.
However, this is a specialized one that I get these on Amazon. They're about $30 a piece, and they are extremely, extremely fragile. So be very careful, or you'll be spending $30 a lot of times.
And tell me what that does again, and why do you have that?
So the reason I have this is fluorescent light bulbs have one nice advantage over incandescent bulbs, and that is they're a much softer light.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And so, for instance, when we had the incandescent bulbs, we would have to put some sort of diffusion over that so that the light would be softer and spread out more and not as harsh. These by nature have that, so I don't put anything on these. These are just screwed in, and I just use them. But this one here is a photography bulb, and it's daylight balanced. So this is daylight lighting, and it doesn't flicker and change color. because it's a specialized one. That's why it's a lot more expensive than, you know, a traditional one. I think you can go to Home Depot and get regular light bulbs that are this size, and they're probably about $10, but they're going to have all the problems of a traditional fluorescent bulb, in that they're not going to have a consistent color all the time, and you can kind of see it change and whatnot. But those are great. And then, of course, you know, LEDs now are the big deal. And so we do a lot of LED lights. So right now, I've replaced my key light that I have in my studio setting over here. I've actually replaced with the Big Brother version of this one. So it's a, you know, just a larger version of this. And you can see this one here is starting to, I think the battery's starting to die in it. But, you know, the batteries in this one actually, what's neat about this, by the way, with these LED lights, this one and its bigger brother, and we'll see here, we can check the battery power. Yeah, the battery is just about dead in this one. You have the ability to adjust the brightness, which you know, you can't really do with other types of bulbs. Because other types of bulbs, if you ever used incandescent bulbs, when you lower that down, it starts to turn more and more orange and red. And so your subject starts to turn that color. With these, you can turn it from barely on to all the way up, and it's going to be a consistent color. It's not going to change. But what's great about these is they're very, very versatile. Right now I'm running these on AA batteries, but you can run them on camera-sized batteries. This uses the Sony standard size battery in here. And you also have the ability to plug it into a traditional outlet. And so you've got 3 different options for that one. I typically run that one on AA batteries, just because I don't use it, you know, I only use it for 5 minutes at a time usually. So it lasts quite a while. But it's a very nice type of light. So LED, if you can get it, is a really good one. If you're buying a new lighting kit, like I said, I'm using ones that are 20 years old, so they use traditional sockets. So I can buy LEDs that go into traditional sockets, or I can buy these, or I can use incandescent bulbs, and it just allows me to, you know, not have to buy lights all the time. I have replaced one of them with that Big Brother LED light, and mostly because I was testing that light, and the company that makes it, Movo, actually sent it to me to test. And it's surprisingly good for a form factor that's only this big. It is far brighter than this giant bulb here.
And that's interesting, because I have, and I think I've just repeated it on trains, and I'm not even sure where I got it, and something that I kind of did, but I always understood that when you had incandescent bulbs, that you needed some white nylons to put over. Yep. And I never quite understood, but you just explained why, and it's because it's to kind of make the light softer on the subject. Yeah. Yeah.
And so like the lighting kit that I have has all sorts of attachments that I can use, and now I don't have to use any of them, because the LEDs and the fluorescent bulbs kind of take care of all that for you, and they don't burn out as quick. So the LEDs and the fluorescents will last, you know, forever before you have to replace them, unless you drop them, because like I said, very, very fragile on those fluorescent ones. I used to have a guy that I worked with, and anytime we did anything, he would always break one. Always. And of course, it's a fluorescent bulb, so, you know, traditionally, you break a fluorescent bulb, you're supposed to have a hazmat suit to clean it up and everything else. And now this one here is, you know, 5 times the size of the one in your house that you're supposed to do that with. So it'd be quite a mess. And of course, they shatter into a billion minuscule pieces.
That's right.
They don't break into 3 giant pieces or anything. So,
so to pull off, to make the lighting worth your time, what kind of camera at the lowest end should we be talking about? I guess let's start by talking about, you know, a traditional webcam. What are we talking about there?
I'll tell you right now, my absolute favorite webcam, the one I'm using right here, right now, is the C920, which is from Logitech. And Logitech actually makes a few different ones that are newer than this one, but people still, including me, prefer this one here over some of the new ones. So they've got like a C922 now, but we like this one better, and one of the reasons is the focal length is perfect. The C922, I believe, is a wider angle.
Yeah, I'm using the 930, and the angle is wide.
Yeah.
right?
And so this one's a little more narrow.
And now does the 920, do the resources run in the PC or do they run in the camera? That's what I never understood about the 920.
Okay, so as far as you're talking about like zoom and things like that, or
right, yeah,
it actually has a real lens in there, so it does do the zoom for you inside of there. It also does the focus in the camera itself, but because it's a webcam, you can control it from software, which is nice. And in fact, right before we went on the air, you probably saw me adjusting the zoom on it and whatnot, because it, for whatever reason, different meeting software tends to use the zoom on it differently. I don't know, it's very strange, and so you have to go in and adjust it a lot of times. But yeah, that's all built in there, and it's of course it's an HD camera. It's not 4K, so that would be the only thing I would say is, you know, nowadays people like 4K, but if you're live streaming, you're probably only streaming at 720 anyway,
right?
So it doesn't matter too much. But this is a 1080p camera, and it really does a very, very nice job. So that, to me, you know, webcam is still probably the low end of things. But some of these are so good nowadays that, you know, this does 1080p. I've had cameras in the past that were $10,000 that were standard definition cameras, and this would blow it away for, you know, what do they sell for, $70 now?
Right,
this one, you know, so just think about that when you're getting a camera. Just remember that no matter what you get, it's going to be better than a camera was in 1990. So
this is true.
a $20,000 camera in 1990. So it's amazing what we can do. Next step, and I don't even know if this would be the next step, because this might be the next step for ease, but the quality is good, is even better than some of the other options, and that's your phone. I mean, the iPhone, I mean, look at this thing. It's got 3 cameras on the back of it, for goodness sakes. And by the way, with some of these, you know, the iPhone, I was just using a software the other day that allows you to use all 3 lenses here and the lens on the front at the same time and shoot 4 different videos at the same time. And so the types of things you could do are just amazing. And you know, in the Android phones, same thing. You know, they've got some great ones out there with some great cameras. And again, the camera on here shooting video is much better than the professional cameras I was using in 1990. So you can't go wrong with that. The next option, obviously, is, you know, you could go to Best Buy and you could get some sort of a camera these days. And I know they're not super popular, and they don't sell a lot of them anymore because everybody uses their phones. But if you can get one of those, that way you've always got a dedicated camera. That can be really good. And again, you get one that's 4K probably for $500 these days, $400, and it's going to have lots of features, and it's going to be really good, and you're going to be happy with it. The big thing with that is make sure that you think about your audio before you go and do that. When you're using the webcam and it's attached to your computer, you can attach all sorts of mics. You can see I've got, you know, this one here. This is a full. This is an actual radio microphone. This is what people use in radio studios. But you could be using, you know, any kind of mic. You can go and get, there's a really nice Samsung mic that sells at places like Best Buy. It looks like a little rocket ship. You got the Blue Yeti. I've got another one over here that looks just like the Yeti by same guys, Movo, that we talked about earlier. They make a really nice one that I got a couple weeks ago, and it looks like the Yeti, and it works like the Yeti, and it's very, very cool stuff. So you can do that with your webcam. The webcam here, separate microphone plugged in, and you've got a great studio. For other types of shooting, you know, with your iPhone, the one thing that people forget, or your Samsung phone or whatever, Android phone, the microphone on here is going to be terrible for shooting video. Because if you put the camera way over here and I try to record, it's going to sound terrible from 3 feet away. So what you need to get is some sort of microphone that will plug into your phone to make sure that you get that. And there's a lot of them out there. Rode makes one, Movo makes one, and they work specifically with your smartphone. So your smartphone is a great option for this. In fact, dirty little secret that I like to tell people is when I shoot my videos for me, it is always on my iPhone. And the reason for that is, and this is something to take into consideration. If you're going to be shooting for a live stream or even just recording videos, if you don't have somebody there with you to man that camera, you could shoot the entire video completely out of focus, and you probably wouldn't be able to tell until afterwards.
Until it's over.
Oh my gosh, it's out of focus. Because I've got really nice cameras over on the other side here in the closet. I can't use them if there's not somebody there manning the camera. So if I'm by myself, I can't shoot myself using those because there's no way for me to know if it's really in focus or not. I can kind of look and go, oh, it looks like it's in focus, but that's because it's on a screen this small from 10 feet away. Well, of course it's going to look in focus, and you get back and you find out it's completely out of focus, and I've done that before. So using your smartphone, it's going to autofocus for you, so you can make sure, because it's a smartphone, you can stream the output so you can see exactly what it looks like. So in my green screen studio over here, I wish I had a way to walk around and show it a little bit, but we've got the green screen over here, but what I have is the camera on this side shooting towards the green screen, and then over here I've got a big screen TV. Well, not a big screen TV, but a good sized flat screen TV, and it's attached to an Apple TV, and I stream my phone to the Apple TV so I can see the lighting and I can hear the sound, or not hear the sound, but I can see the levels of the sound and see that I'm framed properly and see that I'm in focus. And I don't have to worry about that because it wirelessly will send the signal directly to the TV. And I use the Apple TV, but a lot of the TVs have that built in where you can stream your output to that, and you can see exactly what you're doing. And even if I didn't, I know it's going to be in focus because the phone's going to make sure it's in focus. And so that's why I do that.
Ray, okay. What about clothing? Is there something that you need to be intentional about in terms of colors and clothing?
Not as much as you used to. In the old days, you had to really be careful with that because like right now I'm wearing this shirt with all these stripes, and if you take your computer screen that you're watching this on and you were to shrink it down, you'd start to see that these lines will kind of look like they're dancing all across the shirt. In the old days with standard definition TV where it was interlaced, that was a big issue. That's where you would see like that moire pattern that would show up on people's clothes where it was like, I don't know if anybody knows what that means, but if they had stripes on there, the stripes would start to have like these weird patterns that would show up in between them because of the interlacing of the TV and whatnot. Nowadays, that's not nearly as big a deal. There's some things to think about for the camera. Stripes going this way will make you look bigger. Stripes going this way will make you look thinner. So that might be something you want to think about. Obviously, if you're going to be shooting in a green screen, do not wear green. That can be an issue. And I remember, we used to do a lot of shoots at hospitals, and of course the nurses would show up, and what do they wear? They wear green. Or they wear blue with like green flowers on them, and we're like, shoot you in front of the green screen like that. And of course, the cameraman wouldn't think of that, and he would just shoot it. And then later on, I'd get the footage, and I'd be like, oh, great, this nurse looks like she's got 40 bullet holes in her. But, so things like that you have to be careful of. In the old days, red was really tough. That's gotten a lot better. Old types of video did not handle bright red colors very well at all. They would tend to bleed out and look like they were glowing and, just wreak havoc. So you had to, if you were going to use red, you had to be a really deep red, really dark red. Nowadays, that's not as big a deal. I will say that red does tend to still clash with a lot of colors in the background. So sometimes not using red can be better. So if you stick with like blues and light reds or dark reds, but not the bright colored reds that are in the middle, that can help. But even that's not a major issue like it used to be. It used to be bad. In the old days with NTSC and standard definition, the way that the signals worked electronically, colors could actually cause issues with the signal, and that could actually cause issues with the sound. And if you remember, those of you that are old enough to remember the old as seen on TV products, at the end of all the commercials, they always would put up that blue screen and it would say, call this number to get the thing, and it had the red line and the white text. And do you remember what happened when those screens used to pop up on your TV? I don't know if you remember this or not.
No.
Okay, so what would happen is, you'd have the guy going, And, oh, and this is the greatest product in the world. And then that graphic would pop up and the guy would go, to order your product, call 1-800-822, whatever. But you would hear this.
Oh, yeah. That's right, yeah.
And that was literally the white on the screen causing that sound.
That's right. Okay.
As odd as that sounds. So we've come so far. We don't have to worry about these types of things anymore for the most part. The big thing is, like I said, don't wear green. But other than that, you're going to be doing fine. Fluorescent colors, it's a matter of taste. Maybe, that can be a bit of an issue. But,
right.
The lights, the lights that you're using are going to bring out those colors. So if you wear good, strong colors, they're going to come out well. Think about what you're shooting, too. If you're shooting something more somber, don't wear bright reds and yellows. Maybe you wear darker tones and grays and muted colors and things like that. But from a technical standpoint, it's really not a big issue except for green in front of a green screen. And even that, believe it or not, the green screening technology is so good nowadays that you could be wearing one shade of green and it may not even be affected when you do that. So it's gotten a lot better. The other thing I want to bring up, and I mentioned earlier we would talk about this, is green screening specifically when it comes to lighting.
Yeah.
So this has gotten, when I tell you 1,000 times better, I mean, that's not exaggerating. That might be taking it lightly. In the old days, it was very, very hard to do green screen. And those of you old enough to remember in the early 80s when you watched the news forecasts and the newscaster would, well, first of all, a lot of newscasters were still literally standing in front of a map that had markers that they wrote on with it. But when they switched to the green screens, you may remember the guy looked like a ghost and he had, like green fringe around him and everything else. And that was with $100,000 systems that you would get that. Nowadays, I mean, I've got $200 of lighting and an iPhone, and I can do it better than they did with $100,000 worth of equipment. So the world has just changed drastically when it comes to this. But some of the principles still apply because you're going to run into trouble, maybe not trouble you can't overcome with your software, but right now when I do my green screening, with the way I've got it lit up with the lights, and unless I totally goofed something up and didn't realize it, I don't have to do anything anymore. I shoot it, I drop it in there, I put the green screening filter on there, and it's just done. I don't have to adjust anything. I don't have to do anything because the lighting makes such a difference. And the big one, and let me pop my little picture back up here again. The big difference in here is, by the way, that backlight. That backlight can really help when it comes to green screening. And the reason for that is, and let me point out for green screening and for some other purposes, a little bit more about why the three-point lighting works the way it does. We talked about how the key light brightly lights one side of you, or 3/4 of you, and the other one fills in. That's why it's called a fill light. The backlight gets you from the back. Well, the other reason that those are on the sides versus being right in front of you and shooting at you is dealing with shadows behind you. Okay? So if I've got a light over here and I've got a light over here and they're shooting at me like this, then the shadows are probably going to be outside of the film area anyway. And hopefully, if you're using the right lighting, it'll be hard to notice shadows anyway. But most of us don't have all the right lighting. We use what we have available. And so by doing that, you also get the effect of that the shadows kind of drop off on the sides more so that you don't get it right behind you. And in a green screen situation, that can be really big because what you want with a green screen is you want to have the lighting be as even as possible across the entire thing. You don't want to have a bright spot over here because that's where the light's pointing and then it fade off to darker over here, because what will happen is when you get it into your editing system, even if you've got really good green screening tools, you're going to drop that on there and this part's going to disappear and this part's still going to be darker green, and that can cause a problem because then you got to work on it here and it's going to ruin the colors of the skin tones or the clothing that they wear is going to change. So if you've got your backlighting, your background lighting rather, properly done, you don't have to worry about that. In the old days, the proper way that you would do it, and this was actually done with test equipment. We literally had these little TV things that had waveforms on them so that we could actually test what the waveform was on the background and then test the waveform for the person that was in the foreground and make sure that they were similar.
Now,
crazy.
would you recommend? Now, I've seen people do green screen in a live stream, but it feels to me like it's a lot of moving pieces
It
to
is.
have happen on a live, a live call.
Yep.
Either if it were yay or nay and you were going to advise a client, would you advise them to do green screen on a live call where they are, recording, or it's something that they're trying to really get right?
Some situations will vary with that, but for the most part, I would tell them not to. It's just a pain in the neck. Yeah, it can be cool, and if it's a part of your look and feel, then definitely go for it. You just have to understand, most of the time when you're doing live streams, the green screening tools that are built into those live streams are not going to be as good as the ones in your editor. You're not going to have as much control over them. And so if things go wrong, you're going to have a lot of issues. And, if you don't have the right lighting, excuse me, if you don't have all the right lighting, it's going to be an issue. So if you can avoid it, I would. And that's why, I don't even have a green screen here. This is where I do all my lives. I don't even have a green screen there, just because it's a pain in the neck. Now, there are situations, for instance, if anybody on here is a gamer doing Twitch streams, it's very popular to do that. The people, they shoot on the green screen and they shrink themselves down and put themselves in the corner. So that's a popular thing to do there. So yeah, if you want to keep up with those guys, maybe then you'd probably want to do that. But if it's something you don't need to do, don't overcomplicate it. That's why I built the background here and put the lighting in, because it works just as well, and in most cases better. If I really wanted to go live on a green screen, I can walk over here and do that. But like I said, you've got to be able to think about it this way. If you're by yourself and you're doing the live stream, you now have to control everything. You've got to control the green screen. You got to make sure the camera's right. You got to present your material while making sure all these things are right. That's an extra major moving target that you're going to constantly be working with. Now, if you've got the right lighting, then some of those built-in green screening tools may be perfectly fine and you won't have an issue. But if you don't, you're going to be messing with it. And then you're going to, in the middle of the live stream, maybe you move your chair like this, and now it throws the green screen off completely because, it's measuring what's going on there, and now it's changed. And now all of a sudden part of the green might show back up again because you changed the lighting just by moving yourself or what have you. So for me, I wouldn't want to put the extra effort into it. Now, if you're doing, some sort of a bigger production on a live screen and you've got people that can control these things, and somebody's running a camera and somebody can make sure that everything is working good and you just have to present, that's a different story. But most of us are doing it all on our own, so it probably doesn't make sense to add that in there. It's going to cause too much trouble. So I would kind of avoid it, but it's definitely something you can experiment with and try. And I've done it, but to me, it's just more of a pain in the neck.
Yeah. Now, as what you see, what you get, like, can you expect that what you're seeing in a live stream is what you're going to see in the recording, or should you expect some differences, and do you have to do anything in terms of lighting to kind of compensate for that?
Not necessarily in terms of lighting, but there can definitely be differences. In fact, what I always tell people is, and by the way, I break this rule all the time, even though I tell people to do it because I should be doing it, and half the time I just forget to do it. But you're going to be better off if you record what you're doing as well as stream it. So if you got the ability to do it both at the same time,
okay.
For instance, there's a program for, it's only for Mac, called Ecamm, and it does your live streaming, but it always records locally what you're doing as well as broadcasting it out. And the reason you want to do that when you can is you never know what's happening on the other end of that live stream. You might be live streaming out perfectly, but you're live streaming to Facebook, and Facebook is having congestion issues, and so the resolution drops and it gets pixelated and we lose you for a second. But you might not know that while you're doing the live, and so afterwards you only have that live recording that has those issues in it, whereas if you did a local recording, the local recording should be perfect. And so you could always restream that out, or save it put it out in some other manner, and that way you've got a good clean version of that to later upload to YouTube or whatever. So I would recommend doing that, but it's not really necessarily a lighting issue. The only other thing I would say when it comes to lighting and live streams is live streams use very strong compression. So the better lighting you have, the better it will look on that other end. If you don't have great lighting and you're kind of dark and the background is kind of dark, you're going to start to see a lot of pixelation and things like that that you wouldn't know that is happening. So that's one thing you may want to consider, is just making sure you've got a good amount of light. Otherwise, on their end, it'll start to pixelate a little bit. And if any of you have like DirecTV, you'll notice that as well. DirecTV is a very compressed video format, and if you watch it and things are dark in the background, you'll start to see weird, pixelation issues and color issues and everything when it tries to guess the color. Because, basically the way that everything that gets shown in a video is based off of light. So if there's not enough light, then there's not enough information. And if there's not enough information for the codecs to work with, then they get confused and they may screw up the colors, or they may start to screw up the compression a little bit. So the more color, the more information, therefore the better video. Okay.
I do have one more question, and that is, and it strikes me that things like, and it's a subtle point, maybe minor, things like caps and hats, glasses. What are your thoughts on that?
Even though I'm wearing these goofy things, I only started wearing glasses very recently, and I try to take them off most of the time when I do mine, just because, one, people are used to seeing me without them, but two, you can probably see the ring light in my glasses, so that can definitely be an issue. So if you can do it without glasses, then that's better. Now, if you're Drew Carey, where people are used to seeing you in glasses, don't do that. People always look different without glasses. Yeah. So make sure you stick with what actually works with you. But, unless it's a part of your character, Colonel Sanders, you can't imagine him without the glasses, that kind of thing. Other than that, I would take them off if I could, just because it is going to cause some sort of glaring issues. And then what was the other thing you mentioned?
Cap, like a
cap.
ball cap. Yep.
Yeah. I mean, again, the same type of thing. There are people whose gimmick is wearing a hat.
Right.
And if that's the case, go for it. Just be aware, you can see even when I just do this, that it's going to cause issues. It's going to put shadows. It's going to block your face. So you just have to be very, very careful with that. If you can avoid wearing a hat, I would. If it's a cap that's backwards, maybe that would be okay, or a beanie cap or something. It probably wouldn't have much of an effect. But traditional baseball cap, if you can avoid it, I would. But if it's part of your whole gimmick or
your shtick, right? Yeah.
Yeah, then I would keep it. So
I got a question here from Roger, and he's asking, he says, what about live streaming with a live background? And he says, I'd be in a well-lit room, but the view out of our window is pretty good, and I thought I'd try using it as my background.
That can be kind of cool. I will tell you this. The issue that you probably will run into with that is you will need a lot of lights on you, because one of two things is going to happen. If you can see what's going on outside in the sun, you're going to be very dark. And if you can see your face and your face is lit up well, that window is going to look like a giant box of white. So to compensate for that, there's a couple of things you can do. One is, have just massive amounts of strong lights on the inside so that you can kind of compete with what's going on outside. Or the other thing you can do is you can, I haven't done this in ages, but there is film that you can buy that you can put on your windows. It's almost like window tinting, but it's specifically for video. And that will allow you to put that on the window. And then when you look at the window normally, it's going to look kind of dark, but in the camera, you'll be able to light yourself, and you'll be able to see what's going on outside the window. So that's one thing you can do. You're definitely going to be competing with the light outside, and you may get some good or bad issues with that. But if you can do it and you can get it where it looks nice, then yeah, I would totally do that. It can be a lot of fun. You see that on TV a lot. A lot of the TV stations, they'll do that. They shoot, with the Central Park behind them outside. And that's why you see, on the news, people pop up in the window making faces sometimes and things. So be careful of that. But other than that, yeah, that could be very nice to have a nice background like that. No doubt.
Yeah, Roger, I don't know about you. I know my wife would really appreciate the film on the windows. I'm pretty sure she might she might appreciate that.
Fortunately, it's not going to make a mess, and it can come right
Yeah.
back off, so.
All right, any other questions? Man, Ray, man, I could not have imagined that all of this was involved. I was just thinking, just 3 lights and, we'd be out of here in 10 minutes. I knew that. But so let's kind of recap here. We're going to start with the ring light.
Yep.
And
by the way, the ring light is what I'm using for this situation. The 3-point lighting system we talked about will work just as well. So I could have a light here and a light here, which is what I used to have. What the ring light does is the ring light tends to take the place of these 2 lights shining in by having one big light that has lights on each side to get you from both sides at once. So it's a replacement for that, but still, if you have just the 2 lights, you would still do the same thing.
Okay. Yep. And then okay. So the 3-point lighting, maybe, you talked about the strip light you've got in the back, and you'd rather have that shining down.
I would, yeah. So,
okay,
and in fact, we can see that. So if you take a look at that, you can see up there, that's the stream light. Yep. So I would like to put it on some sort of board that tilts down so the light shoots down a little more. But, someday I'll do that. I'm not a carpenter, so.
And then you talked about something, the Philips Hue. Is that how we say that? Philips Hue?
H-U-E. And actually, I can grab one of them actually, let me grab this one because I don't know if it'll reach this far. We'll see. So it's just a, let me see that. There we go.
Okay.
So it's it looks like a regular light bulb, but it's controlled by your phone. And you can set it up to change colors and all sorts of things. And by the way, this little can that I have for it, I don't even know where I got these. I think I just had these lying around. They're meant to be sconces for a wall. And I just put 2 of them are on the ground shooting up. So this one just sits down here and shoots up this way.
Yep.
And then the other ones, I've actually got a lighting stand on here and a lighting stand here. And I've actually just clipped these lights to it on, I got, here, I'll even pull this off. Let's take a look at it. So what I have here, if I can get it out, this is just like a work light. This isn't even a professional light. So this is just one, you can get this at like Walmart for $5 or whatever.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And I just plugged the Hue light into that one. And then I use the clip here, which has got the, the work clip, and I clip it to the pole. And that's it.
That's cool.
I keep it very simple. We don't need to have $800 lights in order to set this all up. We can do it very simply and easily. And now I can't remember how I had it, but hopefully we get it back in position in a little bit. So. Yeah.
Cool. And we talked about the cam, and the cam we talked about the Logitech 900 series. Oh,
there goes one of the lights.
Oh, not the $30 light, I hope.
No, that one's fine. That's the other thing. These Hue lights, very, very strong. You could throw them out the window and they'd probably be fine. So.
All right. Okay. Very good. Very good. Okay. Any other questions, everybody? I was very, very informative, and I think I'm going to go and start looking at really tightening up my light myself now that I kind of have it. I never really quite fully understood the the 3-point system, so I'm glad you had that graphic up there. That's going to be helpful for me personally. I know it's going to be helpful for everybody else. And so Ray, where can folks get more information, just the kind of stuff that you do? Where can they see more of what you do?
My main site is raythevideoguy.com, and there, that's more of a who is this lunatic guy sort of place. But inside there, we actually have an area called resources. And so, or I think it says getting started on the main page, but it's the resources page. And so if you go to that page and you go to the getting started, we do have a lot of getting started stuff in there, a lot of free downloads. We've got some music and sound effects and things like that you can download, along with a bunch of other stuff that will help you to get started with your videos. But you can always find me on YouTube. Just look up Ray the Video Guy on YouTube or Facebook or LinkedIn. You'll be able to find me. I am not hard to find.
Okay. Yeah. Because you do some interviews and some stuff that I've seen.
We do a lot of software and hardware reviews. We do a lot of interviews with people. So.
Okay, so everybody, I'm going to link up to all his stuff so you'll be able to get that in the recording. I really want to encourage you to head over to his website and get signed up over there on raythevideoguy.com. So very, very cool. Ray, thank you,
Oh, no
really,
problem.
really, really a lot, man. This is really very helpful, again, to me personally, and so I know it's going to be helpful to everyone else. And everybody, thank you for being here. I appreciate you all, whether you are watching by recording or you are watching live. I appreciate you all coming and being a part of this, and streaming video playbook. I appreciate you all picking that up also. So everybody, thank you very much for being here. Ray, once again, thank you. Have a great day, everybody, and a pleasant tomorrow. Take care.